Guess who's still got books to show you? Hello there fellow viewer, my name is Gabriel, and today I am bringing you the third and final part of my big first 2 years of uni book haul, book showing thing. If you are caught up and have watched the previous 2 videos, then you know that this final part will be the books that I bought while in Korea, the physical books that I brought from over there. If you have not yet gotten a chance to watch the previous 2, then I will be linking them in the description below, or they will be appearing somewhere on your screen right about now. So just like I mentioned, these are the books that I physically bought while I was in Korea. I had to put them in a big box and ship them over here because even though I try to control myself, there are still a considerable number of books in here to show you guys. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump into my Korean part of this haul. So the first book that I have here to show you is the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. Something that happened really soon after I started my classes in South Korea was that I found the cutest, most quaint, adorable used bookshop right next to my university, and I would go in there sporadically just to see what they had, to see if anything captured my attention. The entirety of the second floor was dedicated to books that weren't in the Korean language, so once in a while I was able to find pearls like these. I had no idea what the Screwtape Letters was when I added on one of the many extremely crowded shelves of the bookstore. That's actually one of the things that made it so fun to go. It's just the immensity of books that were there. I highly admire the way that C.S. Lewis was able to interweave religious ideologies and doctrines into his Chronicles of Narnia series, so I automatically assumed that I would enjoy anything else by C.S. Lewis. So I got home and I found out that this is actually a book in which he writes from a demon's point of view. The demon's name is Screwtape, and he is writing to his nephew, who is another demon, but who is a demon in training. So if I was interested before, then after I read this, I was just sold. It sounds like a very ingenious way to tell the story that I'm pretty sure C.S. Lewis wants to tell. Then we have Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. Lolita is a book that I brought with me to Korea in hopes that, you know, the magical incentive to read it would appear out of thin air. It didn't, and I haven't read it. Lolita is a book that has become controversial because it depicts the relationship between a 40-ish-year-old man and a 12-year-old girl. The summary in itself can give you an idea of just how problematic this book can be. However, there are still a lot of people that say great things about it, so I'm going into it with the hopes that something about this book and the story is redeemable. Then of course we have Call Me By Your Name by André Aciman. I mentioned in part 2 that I never go anywhere without this book. This has lived in the UK, in Portugal, in Korea, in Malaysia. Call Me By Your Name is one of my favorite books ever. I think it's possibly one of the best things ever written. I'm pretty sure you know what it's about. This book is set in Italy in the 1980s and follows a teenager and his first romantic relationship, as well as a part of his sexual awakening. If you remotely enjoyed the movie, then I definitely recommend you go ahead and read the book because it's amazing. There's another one here that I bought in the used bookshop, and this is a non-fiction book titled Reading Like a Writer, a guide for people who love books and for those who want to write them. I don't usually say this about me because I assume that people assume this of me, but as a reader, I have always had immense passion for the written word, and there is that tiny bug inside of me that says that I should sit down and actually write a story. So this book immediately interested me because it appeals to aspiring writers who come from a reading background, and that's me. I don't know when I'm gonna get to it, but I see this as kind of like a bedside table read in which I just read a couple of chapters or a couple of pages every day, every other night. Let's see. We have here The Interpreter by Suki Kim, which was one of the books that I read for my literature class. Now, while I was in Korea, I took my first ever literature module and I absolutely loved it. The class was called American Minority Literature, and we took a look at some of the most influential books that were written by American hyphenated authors. So this was the Asian American story that we worked on. This book was absolutely phenomenal. This is a novel that is very highly inspired on the author's real life, about a girl who is born in Korea but her parents migrate to the United States. It's about the way that it impacts her family, about the way that impacts the rest of her life, how this one aspect of her life literally molded everything about her. It deals a lot with family dynamics, about what makes a toxic family household. I really highly recommend it if you're looking for something that causes you to think about the experience of someone that is so different from what is considered to be the norm. Then we have something that I found at the used bookshop, and that is the whole of the Twilight Quartet. Let me just line these up. There you go. The entirety of the Twilight series. I had never ever read Twilight, so I saw the books and I thought, you know what? It's now or never. The hype has died down. No one is really talking about it anymore except as a point in the past that we all lived through. So I bought the first one and I read it and it wasn't bad. I definitely don't think it warrants all the irrational hate that it got from everyone, it's not quality literature, you know, it's not the Hunger Games. The mindset that I had going into this was, okay, let's see what this phenomenon was all about. And now I definitely can see where the haters come from and where the twihards come from. I guess I liked it enough to buy the rest of the series, which I will be getting to sometime when I feel like going back into this world. If you'd like to know my thoughts on the story, I might consider doing a reading vlog if you'd be interested in that, so let me know. Next up is I Am Not Your Negro by James Baldwin and also Raoul Peck. This is the word-for-word transcript of the movie titled I Am Not Your Negro. The director Raoul Peck was inspired by an unfinished manuscript by James Baldwin to create this documentary. In it, James Baldwin goes through the motions of losing three of the biggest names in the civil rights movement, which were Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Medgar Evers. It is honestly life-altering. The things that are brought up are absolutely raw. It paints them in a light that just leaves no shadow of a doubt how wrong it is, everything that these people have lived through. I only bought the transcript because I know that the written word helps me to interiorize a story, but if you want to immerse yourself in this, then I undoubtedly recommend you go watch the I'm Not Your Negro documentary. It is brutal, it's amazing, and it's very pertinent for the times that we live in. I read this in the context of my American minority literature class before the whole Black Lives Matter movement completely exploded at the end of May, and I can tell you that it's something that really does help you understand what this movement is fighting for. Like I said, it completely altered the way that I looked at so many things, and I really recommend you go and check it out. Another book that I read for my American minority literature class was Without You There Is No Us by Suki Kim. The tagline is My Secret Life Teaching the Sons of North Korea's Elite. This is the same author of The Interpreter, which I just showed you, but this is a novel and this is not. This book, more than anything that I have read this year, completely changed everything about the way that I look at life. This is a non-fiction kind of report on what it was like for Suki Kim to infiltrate a school in North Korea teaching English. Suki Kim is actually a journalist, but she managed to infiltrate the school as a teacher in the capital city of North Korea, Pyongyang. She ends up teaching English to the sons of North Korea's elite. So she comes into direct contact with the future of this country, because these are the men that will inherit their father's social standing, their fortune, their military influence with the leader Kim Jong-un. Talking about this book and giving you the summary of this book, it really feels like I am talking about just another young adult dystopian, but what really got to me, what shot straight to my heart, was that these people exist right now. It is insane, and I could not even begin to describe to you the conditions that these people live in. It really took me aback that while I am talking right now, while I edit this video, while I upload it, while you are watching it right now, the people in North Korea are suffering one of the worst regimes that has ever existed, and by far the worst right now. These people are not only living 60 years ago when it comes to technology and health and rights, these people are also living in conditions that are so similar to the dystopians that we know that it is terrifying. And it's something that got to me to the point where I was crying while reading this book. I have gotten so used to stories and to fiction that when I come across a story that is real and it's so similar to things that I have read that have made me so uncomfortable, so exalted, so mad, so angry. This is real. There are a lot of books that you can check out on North Korea, but this one is one that I think really gives you the idea of the sheer wrongness that it is what these people are going through. Suki Kim's writing is also very personal, and you feel like you're reading a sort of diary. It's amazing, and I really think that if you ever have some time, you should definitely give it a read and be moved by the way that this book can move people. Next two books are also books that I brought with me from here to Korea, and that is Human Acts and the Vegetarian by Han Kang. These are two Korean books translated into the English language by arguably one of the biggest modern Korean writers. Vegetarian tells the story of a woman who decides to become a vegetarian apparently on a whim, and it is a beautifully constructed social criticism of Korea. It works a little bit like Parasite, in which the story is so out there, it's so crazy, but it takes a very particular kind of mechanism to click into place for things to get so out of hand and escalate so quickly. Human Acts is more of a historical fiction account of one of the biggest massacre, if not the biggest massacre in Korean modern history, and that was the Gwangju Rebellion. South Korea has also lived very tumultuous moments in their fight for democracy, and although this is a fictional book, it really accurately depicts the suffering of a people when the students of university and the residents of the city Gwangju decided to rebel against their totalitarian leader. It is another book that really can move you. review. These are the two books that got me started on Korean literature, and I have to say I wasn't disappointed at all. They are really, really strong. If you're looking for a kind of storytelling that is slightly different from what you're used to, a bit slower, a bit more impactful, then I definitely recommend you go ahead and read these. I was very excited to catch this in that bookshop that I mentioned, The Phantom of the Opera in Korean. Of course, my mastery of the language is nowhere near good enough for me to even start reading this, but I found it so cute. The Phantom of the Opera is one of my favorite things ever. I went to watch the West End production in September 2016, and it is one of the biggest musicals of all time, y'all. And then the last book I have here is a Korean book, and it is the Korean version of Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo. They translated it to My Friend Winn-Dixie. It was actually Kate DiCamillo's books that helped me with my English when I was younger. These stories are such a deep part of me that I thought maybe if I got them in Korean, they would help me with the language. Because of Winn-Dixie tells the story of a girl who adopts a dog on a whim. It's a children's book, but it honestly can be read by anyone. It's a lesson on the struggles of humanity, on letting go of a painful past. It all revolves around this stray dog that Opal, our protagonist, decides to adopt. I'm getting emotional just thinking about it because it's a really beautiful story. I also own The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane in Korean, which is possibly my favorite book ever. This is actually a book sleeve cover thing that I got while in Korea, and I'm really excited to use it for books that I do not want to get ruined. Okay folks, so that is everything that I have to show you today and in general. I hope these videos were somewhat entertaining and gave you sort of an idea of the books that have been impacting me, keeping myself busy with over these past few years where I was away from BookTube. If you want to know any of my thoughts on any of these books, please let me know down below and I'll get back to you soon. I'm also open to suggestions of any sort of the kind of content that you'd like to see from me, so if there's anything, please let me know. Really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you again sometime very soon. Goodbye!